What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats of every one of the weapons in Black Ops Cold War's multiplayer. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the brand new SMG. This is the LC10. And kicking it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, which is 30, 28, 23, and this means it's always going to be a 5, 6, or 7 shot kill. It's also worth noting with this, there are no separate body multipliers, but we do get a headshot multiplier of 1.4, which gives us a headshot damage profile of 42, 39, 32. And what this means is in the maximum damage range, it's going to take you 3 headshots mixed in with a body shot in order to reduce the number of shots it takes to kill, which isn't really all that practical. However, at mid-range, it's just 1 headshot mixed in with body shots, and then longer ranges, it's 2 headshots mixed in with body shots. So generally speaking, if you're playing to the strengths of this gun and keeping yourself in that maximum damage range, headshots aren't really worth going for. But at mid to longer ranges, it can be helpful to mix a headshot in if you've got the opportunity. As for our rate of fire, this is pretty solid at 800 rounds per minute, and what this means for our time to kill potential is in the 5-shot kill range, we've got a pretty decent time to kill at 300 milliseconds. This is a little bit on the slow side for an up-close time to kill for an SMG. However, a 300 millisecond time to kill is still very competitive. This is a very respectable time to kill. Just don't expect to be melting people instantly like you can with some of the other SMGs. Now, moving on to bullet velocity, we've got a very solid bullet velocity for an SMG at 410 meters per second. It's not quite as good as the AK-74U, but it is still noticeably better than all of the other SMGs. As for our ranges, this is where this gun really shines. This has the best range values out of all of the SMGs. This is the first time I've had to zoom out my range map for an SMG. You can see our 5-shot kill range is about 21 meters, which is very solid. But more importantly, our 6-shot kill range is 51 meters, which is insane for an SMG. So very, very good range properties here. Now we can also see the suppressors will decrease our ranges by 15 and 25% depending on the suppressor. And with our barrels, the reinforced barrel gives us an 18% boost, the rifled barrel gives us a 25% boost, and then finally the task force barrel will give us a 50% boost to our range values. As for hardcore, we've got an incredible one-shot kill potential for an SMG at 51 meters. So this gun is actually incredible for hardcore game modes if you want to be a bit more on the aggressive side. As for our hipfire, this is standard for SMGs, and that is to say it's got a very good hipfire spread. And then when we get into our idle sway, you can see there's very little movement while aiming down sight, so it's really good in this area as well. And this is what brings us to recoil. Now, when looking at the recoil plot with this, it does have a relatively high magnitude of recoil, but this is super easy to predict and control. There is very little horizontal movement and very little side-to-side bounce as well, and therefore I actually consider this to be the most accurate SMG that we currently have in this game. Moving on to handling, our aim down sight time is pretty standard for an SMG at 275 milliseconds, and our stated sprint out time is 350 milliseconds, which is pretty normal for an SMG. However, there's something very interesting with this gun, and this is, for the first time out of any of the guns I've seen in this game, our experienced sprint out time is actually slower than the stated sprint out time. In every other case that I've seen, our experienced sprint out time is usually noticeably faster than the stated sprint out time, but not in this case. And therefore, this is also by far the slowest sprint out time out of all of the SMGs. And this is the biggest downside to using this gun. Next up, let's have a look at our reload add time, which is actually fairly standard for an SMG at 1.65 seconds. And here are all the reload add times with each of the different magazine attachments as well. For me, I would say magazine attachments are completely optional on this gun. They're always a nice boost, but I would say none of them are really necessary for this gun. But finally, for base stats, this brings us into our movement speeds, which are all just standard for an SMG, which means you've got very good mobility with this. And that wraps it up for the base stats of this gun without any attachments on it. And the strengths are pretty obvious here. We've got an incredible range for an SMG, it's also a very accurate SMG, and it's got great velocity. And therefore, obviously, this is going to be excelling at those mid to longer ranges for an SMG at least. As for the weakness, we don't have an amazing time to kill for an SMG, so most of the other SMGs will beat you up close. And on top of this, we have by far the slowest sprint out time in the SMG category. Aside from that though, those are really the only weaknesses. This is a great all-around sort of versatile SMG. But one last thing to look at before we get into our best attachment combinations here is the Task Force barrel. Now the Task Force barrel gives us a very slight damage boost, but when we look at the damage profile and everything, this is pretty negligible. It doesn't change the number of shots it takes to kill to the body at all, and essentially the only practical thing this does is up close, it's going to take you 2 headshots instead of 3 mixed in with body shots to reduce the number of shots to kill. And then at really long ranges, it will now just take one shot to the head mixed in with body shots to reduce the number of shots to kill. The problem with that, though, is it also significantly increases our recoil, and therefore I would just say stay away from this attachment. There's really not much reason to use it. So with that, this finally brings us into a couple example class setups that I wanted to share for you guys with this particular gun that I've found some success with. With this first one, we've got the agency suppressor, which is going to keep us off the radar, which is really important. And it also helps a bit with that vertical recoil control, and we saw earlier this gun mainly just has vertical recoil, so that's really nice. After that, we got the reinforced heavy barrel, which boosts our damage range as well as our velocity, which is excellent. Then the field agent grip, just to give us a super accurate gun. This is what our recoil pattern looks like when you have the field agent grip combined with that agency suppressor. And you can see it just makes it much more accurate and super easy to control. I actually feel comfortable challenging people like across the map with this SMG, which is pretty crazy to think for an SMG. But next up, we have the 42 round speed mag. I didn't want to go with one of the bigger ones because it hurts the aim down sight time a bit too much, but I did want to boost that magazine capacity a bit. And then finally, we've got the airborne elastic wrap just to make sure we get a really fast aim down sight time so it's super snappy. Now we can see with the final stats here, we've got a great range and velocity for an SMG, also an awesome reload time and an amazing aim down sight time. However, we didn't really help our sprint out time at all. So this is more so something to just keep in mind with the playstyle while using this. Of course, if you wanted to swap out an attachment for something that helps with sprint to fire time, then that's fine. But for me, I just find that I adjusted my playstyle a little bit, and I found a lot of success with this. So yeah, that's the first one I got for you guys. The next one I want to look at here is using the Gunfighter wildcard. So we've got 8 attachments on here. And with this, we've got the snap point, just because that's my favorite optic on a lot of the SMGs. Once again, that agency suppressor. This time we're just going with the 12.5-inch extended barrel, and I do want to explain myself here. What I'm going to be going for with this class setup is a really fast aim walking movement speed, which helps you dodge bullets essentially while strafing side to side in a gunfight, and it's actually super effective with this gun. So that's why I'm just going with that 12.5-inch extended barrel to boost my bullet velocity a bit. But then we've got the steady aim laser to help with our hipfire accuracy. The field agent grip, once again, just like the previous setup. With this one, we've also got the Salvo 52 round fast mag, which is great. The airborne elastic wrap, just like the previous setup, so we can get a pretty solid aim down sight time. And then finally, this one's kind of the key with this setup. We have the SAS combat stock, which gives us an amazing aim down sight strafe speed. We can actually strafe at 92.5%, which is very, very fast. And this means we can come around corners strafing while aiming down sight, which is a really effective thing to do. And then also just in the middle of gunfights, strafing back and forth can really throw people off, especially at mid to longer ranges where this gun starts to excel. And therefore, I just think this is a really interesting and fun sort of setup with this gun. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the LC10 SMG. As for my thoughts on this, I love this SMG. I think it is just a great mid to somewhat longer range SMG. Like I said, it's not going to be super dominant in really close quarters compared to other SMGs, but outside of that, we've got a really nice, versatile, and accurate SMG, and I would say this has completely taken over the place of the Bullfrog. If you're somebody that really likes the Bullfrog in this game, I think you're going to fall in love with the LC10. It's better in just about every single way. Of course, that is just my opinion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think about the LC10? Do you really like this SMG, or do you hate it, or are you just kind of indifferent? Now, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, including the one I just did on the Fire 83, which came alongside the LC10, I will leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.